So, I've been working at Walmart for about 3 years now. It's not the best job, but it has decent pay and was enough to pay half the rent while my boyfriend paid the rest. I work and go to school full-time, so managing both my job and school was a hassle. One week, my managers, being the jerks that they were, gave me a week of closing shifts. This was really inconvenient, as I had a 7:45 a.m. class on Wednesdays, but they didn't seem to care about that when I spoke to them. It was annoying to say the least, but I sucked it up and worked my shifts as scheduled. The night shifts usually consisted of us cleaning, putting things back on shelves, etc. Well, one night during that week, it was 10 minutes before we closed, and the only ones in the store were me and my other coworker, Seth. Seth was counting up the registers while I was mopping the floors of all the aisles. At one point while mopping, I go down one of the aisles and see a man looking at the shelves of the arts and crafts section. This was odd, as Seth and I did a sweep throughout the store to make sure everyone was gone, and we didn't see this man anywhere. I wasn't sure what it was, but I started to get this weird energy off him, and not the good kind. I politely tell him that the store is closed and that he have to come back tomorrow. He looks at me and profusely apologizes, telling me that he just has to pick out one more thing. After all, we had closed just a few minutes ago, so I made an exception and told him to get whatever he needed, but to make it quick. That being said, I finished cleaning and radio said that we still had one last customer in the store. He said that it would be no problem and that he'd ring him up. With that out of the way, I decided to go put the cleaning supplies away and took that time to use the restroom before I clocked out. Now, the restroom in the front has been out of order, which meant that I had to use the one in the back of the store. I go into the bathroom, take off my vest, and do my business. About 30 seconds later, I hear the door to the bathroom open and someone step inside. For some reason, I thought it was Seth telling me that he was leaving or something, and with that, I called out his name. However, I didn't hear a response back, and that's when I texted him asking if he were by the back of the store. He instantly responded, saying no and that he was still waiting for that other customer. That's when I look up and see an eye staring at me through the crack of the stall. It's safe to say I screamed the loudest I've ever had and pulled up my pants and basically rammed the door, pushing the man to the ground. I ran over to the front and told Seth everything and to call the police. Thankfully, the police station wasn't too far from here, so they were able to have an officer over within 2 minutes. Police had told us to get out of the store while they went inside, as they didn't know if he was armed. Turns out, he actually had a 4-inch hunting knife he had on him from our outdoor section. He had it in his back pocket, and God only knows what he was gonna do with it. He was arrested, of course, and has actually done similar things before. He had been put in jail before, but was released for good behavior. This time, I'm not sure as to how long he was gonna be in jail for, but I hope it's a while, as that was probably the scariest thing to ever happen to me. If something feels off or wrong about something, I strongly suggest that you always trust your gut. It may just save your life.
So this happened about 13 years ago. I was 10 years old at the time and my brother was 8. During that year, we had just moved to a new town and the Walmart had this sweet arcade up near the service desk. So every time my parents would bring us grocery shopping, they'd give us a few dollars and let us go play in the arcade. Now, the town had an incredibly low crime rate and the arcade was right at the front of the store where dozens of people were checking out. So I mean, what could possibly go wrong? So my brother's playing the claw machine while I'm standing on the side of it and trying to help him angle it perfectly above a stuffed animal that he's trying to get. Suddenly, this random hillbilly walks up to the claw machine next to us, inserts a quarter, and begins moving the claw around. But for most of this time, he's making eye contact with my brother and smiling, not even watching his own game. He's not even talking to us. He's just staring and smiling. He has long, thin brown and silver hair pulled back in a loose ponytail at the base of his skull. He also has a camo trucker hat and a long, scraggly beard. I think I can remember vividly the way he smelled. It was kind of like a stale beer ashtray and something that smelled like a sweet yet sour dirt. Or maybe fungus. I'm not really sure. He tries to make small talk with me and my brother. The way we were raised was to always be aware of strangers, but still be polite. Eventually we get bored of the game we're playing and I usher my brother to follow me to a new game, which was on the opposite side of the arcade. A few seconds later, the man follows us, then stationing himself once again right at the claw machine next to us. At some point, an overweight lady had walked in and then said to the hillbilly, "Hey, what are you doing to these little kids?" and then snickers at me. He then replies with,
"I'm trying to win them some stuffed animals."
The lady then begins playing the claw right on the other side of us, so pretty much now my brother and I are literally sandwiched right between these two strange hillbillies. His comment comes across kind of weird to me because I previously thought that maybe he was just trying to win something for his kids or something. But this entire time he had just been following my brother and I around from game to game trying to win us toys. This has been going on for maybe about 20 minutes at this point. They followed us to several different machines and spent a lot of money. Every single time my brother and I switched machines, they'd follow us. The hillbilly then says to the lady,
"Hey, I'm out of money. You got any?"
She then says back, "Nah, I'm broke too." My brother then says, "I have $1 still." Now, this is the part that really scared me. I remember listening to these two talk about some really weird things to us. Asking if I have a boyfriend, asking where we go to school, where our parents work, if we've ever done drugs, etc. But when my brother said he had $1, she then responded with the most terrifying thing I'd heard from them yet. The woman suddenly burst out with, "Well shit, then go ahead and give it to him, boy." Her face was red. The tone in which she shouted was so ear-piercing and gut-wrenching that I could feel the blood drain from my face. My brother looked like he was about to cry. He hands her the $1 and her face lights up. She laughs it off, almost like she's trying to make it seem like she was joking when she yelled at us. My father then walks up a couple of minutes later. As I turn to tell him that these people have spent about $15 to win toys for us, they leave hurriedly before he's able to get a good look at them. My dad is totally livid. He takes us up to the front desk and he tells them what I told him. They had made an announcement on the intercom to keep an eye out for these people and to report it to an employee if they see them. Then they called the police. I don't actually remember this part or really much of anything after my father arrived, but this is what he told me. They never did find the couple. Apparently the police reviewed the security cameras and then told my parents that the couple left the store pretty much immediately right after my father showed up, and without any groceries. Every time I see a man or woman in Walmart that looks as I remember them, I get really bad anxiety and try to avoid them.
When I was about 13, I lived in an apartment complex with my mom and older brother in Chicago. It's a very expensive city to live in, and with my mom working 2 jobs to support ourselves, it was a struggle. Those who live in Chicago will probably understand the expenses to live here, especially those in the city area. Anyway, it had been my birthday, and my mom had given me $50 to spend on whatever I wanted. A few blocks away from my apartment was a Walmart supercenter that had pretty much anything us kids were interested in. This was around the time where the new GTA game came out, so my brother and I drove to the store to see if they had any left. My brother had told me that I could go off alone, but to come to the front of the store after I got what I wanted. The second we walk into the Walmart, I instantly go to the game section and thankfully get my hands on the game I wanted. As I'm leaving the gaming aisle, I see a man I had never seen before turn the corner and wave at me. He wore a white t-shirt, torn cargo shorts, and had on a hat that said Nirvana, which, for those of you who don't know, is the name of a very popular rock band. Growing up, I was always taught to be respectful to others, so I gave him a friendly nod as a way of saying hi. Only then did I realize that doing that was a big mistake. He then approaches me while reaching out his hand for a handshake. Almost immediately, the horrid smell of vomit hit me like a brick, but I couldn't make it seem obvious I noticed. He then says in a raspy voice if I liked video games. With a slight smile, I tell him yes and try to make it seem like I was looking for another game. As an extra precaution, I also put on my AirPods, but before I could do that, he says that he has a son who also likes video games. I tell him that was cool and wished him a nice day and leave the aisle hoping he wouldn't follow me. I make my way over to the front when I look back to see him begin to follow me, but keeping a distance. I then walk a bit faster, and it was then where I had saw my brother waiting for me by the front where I told him to just go. At that point, the man had followed me to the front. However, when he saw my brother, he casually looked away and acted as if he were looking at the office supplies on the shelves. Long story short, we leave the store and get into the car to go home where my brother asked what was wrong in a very direct tone. I hesitate for a moment, gathering up the courage to say it, when he looks out of the window and goes, "So, who's that?" I tell him that he had followed me throughout the store and was asking me weird questions. By this point, my brother knew what was going on. He put the car in reverse and drove out of the... While driving, he tells me to not tell Mom and that if anything happens that I should tell him. When we got home, none of us spoke to my mom about it as we knew we'd get into trouble if she had found out I spoke to him. Unfortunately, however, the story doesn't end there. About a week later, on the last day of school, I had gone to the bus stop to wait for the bus. It was around 7 a.m., and I'm waiting for a good 20 minutes when I hear a strange noise from down the street. At the time, it was sort of foggy out, but as the noise got louder, I see up ahead a red pickup truck approach me. The truck slowly rolls up to me, and when I see the driver, I instantly got this sense of dread. In the driver's seat is the same man from Walmart wearing that all too familiar Nirvana hat. He rolls down his window, gives me a smile, and winks as he drove away. Thankfully, the bus had come soon after, and I couldn't be more happier to go to school. After that, I never saw him or his pickup truck again, and I've kept silent about it ever since. We have since moved from Chicago due to my mom getting a new job offer, but I'm just glad I never saw him again.
Now, this happened last night, and I'm still freaking out about it. I really wish I had called the cops. I might actually still make a report later today. So for reference, I'm a tall 26-year-old female, and I have two beautiful daughters, 3 and 5 years old. We live in New Mexico in a small town about an hour and a half away from the city. With that being said, on to the story. My sister came from out of town to visit, so we all met up at my mom's house to go hang out. Of course, not seeing my sister for a while naturally led us to hanging out late. We ended up leaving around 9:30 p.m. On the way home, I decided that we should stop at Walmart and grab a few things we need, since we're in town and live so far away from any stores. First though, my daughters and I stopped for gas because I really hate getting gas any later than 7, because, well, all the weirdos are around, and obviously it was well past 7 at this point. My daughters and I were having a blast in the car, just singing and making fun of each other on our way to the gas station. My girls were super excited to go to the gas station because the one we stopped at is really huge and it has this big aisle full of toys that my girls were already asking to look at. Anyways, as we park, I get out to put my mask on, and I notice out of the corner of my eye, 2 guys in a bluish silver Honda staring in my direction. One of them was pointing at me through his windshield, which wasn't tinted, so I could easily see into his car. His car is parked at the pump directly behind my car, and I'm parked right in front of the gas station's door. I didn't get really nervous right away because I grew up in this town and I used to hang out with a really bad crowd as a teen. So in return, I know some sketchy people, unfortunately. So I thought maybe they just recognized me. That is, until they got out of the car. I turned to look at them, and I know I'd never seen them before. So I just made a note of it, and then went back to getting my daughters out of the car. When I got my girls out of the car, I had turned to my left side towards the gas station door, and I noticed the more thug-looking guy was just standing there with his arm under his shirt, to where I pretty much couldn't see his hand. I noticed something reflecting light near his waistband. I knew it didn't look like a gun, but instead looked like a handle to a really large hunting knife. I was immediately put off by this, and I felt my body heat up and a wave of anxiety wash over me. Every bad thought just started racing through my head. Like I said before, I used to hang out with a really bad crowd, and I've really been through and seen some things that I wish I didn't. But because of that, I'm a paranoid person and tend to be hyper aware of my surroundings. Don't get me wrong though, just because I'm petite doesn't mean I'm not strong. I can certainly pack a punch, trust me. Anyway, I grab my daughter's hands tightly and start ushering them inside. The guy then says,
"Whoa, let me get that door for you."
I smile and just say thank you, confidently not breaking eye contact with him. I don't know why, but I always tend to read people by their body language and eyes instead of the words coming out of their mouth, and this guy's body language felt aggressive. I had that feeling of dread completely wash over me. I got my daughters inside, and to my relief, there was kind of a lot of people inside, so I was able to relax a bit. My daughters went straight to the toys, and I followed, allowing them to look at them for a minute. We then got our snacks, paid for gas, and went outside to move my car to the pump. As I parked and started putting the fuel in my car, I opened the back doors and buckled up my daughters. As I'm leaning over, I had looked out my front window, and I noticed the guys coming out in a hurry. For some reason, my fight or flight kicked in, and I shut the door. I took the pump out of my car and put it back in, even though I still had $3 left, but I didn't care. I walked around my car to get into the driver's seat, and as I shut the door, I then glanced over and noticed the driver of the other car turned all the way around staring at me. Right then and there, I knew I was in trouble. My hands started shaking. I buckled up and peeled out of there. I didn't even care if I got pulled over by a cop. In fact, I was kind of hoping I would because that would probably be a good thing. I looked in my rearview mirror when we stopped at a red light, and I had then seen the car coming up behind me. The light was red, but there were no cars coming from either side, so I decided to just run the light, and what do you know? The car followed. I'm now internally freaking the fuck out now. My oldest daughter starts picking up on this and asks if I'm okay. What's wrong? I tell her nothing and that I'm just really tired and want to go home, so I think we'll just go to the store tomorrow. She then says okay. All I can think about is getting out of town and onto the road that is practically a straight road for half an hour. If I can get on that road, I can lose these guys, because luckily for me, I have a 2014 Impala that was a cop car. So it has no governor and actually has a performance mode, which I can turn on when I hit the traction control button. I glance back and I see this car is so close to me and I'm scared they're gonna hit me. I see something waving out of their window and I realize it's the guy holding his knife and he's trying to get me to pull over. No, fuck that. What, do they think I'm that stupid? The guy starts swerving back and forth trying to scare me. And I'm just praying I make it because once I make this last turn onto the straight road, I then lose cell phone service too. I actually remembered a story on Southern Cannibal's channel about a girl being followed and how she tricked the person following her because they didn't know all the roads and the turns on them. I'm hoping I lose them before we get into the actual mountain where there are sharp turns, but if not, I now have a plan. We finally get to the straight part of the road, and the car's trying to come up to the side of my car. So I wait till it gets close, and I hit the button. My car then picks up speed and really fast. I don't lose them though. They were still following me, and we're about 20 minutes out of town. And I know the turns are coming up quick, and you have to slow down, because there's no way you can take them that fast. Plus, there's usually always elk and deer on the road at this time. I begin to start crying from all the fear and stress because my baby girls are in the back seat. My youngest keeps telling me to slow down and that she's scared, and my oldest keeps asking me what's wrong and what's going on. And I'm just trying to tell them that we're okay, that we just need to get away from the bad car that's behind us. Sure enough, we start rounding the corners, and what do I see? A fucking elk in the road. I know this was a dumb decision, but I didn't see any other choice at this point. The elk was in the other lane walking across away from my lane, so I decided not to slow down and just pray and hope the elk doesn't come towards me. We fly right past it, and the elk doesn't move. I keep glancing back, and I finally see the car coming, and they make it past the elk as well. I scream fuck and just keep going. There's a town coming up, and it has one of the sharpest turns that I've ever taken. You have to slow down to 10 miles per hour to take it. I'm now clinging onto the hope that they don't know this area or about this turn, so as I start approaching it, I let go of the gas, slowing down to 30 miles per hour without touching my brakes so they don't see me brake and know to slow down for the turn. I made it through the turn, but I could feel my car wanting to go up on 2 wheels, but I also knew that this wasn't enough speed on this turn to actually even flip my car. I start hauling ass out of there, and I can hear screeching tires, so I know it worked. They took it too fast, which gave me enough time to lose them. I come up on the second little town. I turn down a road and turn right onto a dirt road and shut my lights and car off. I managed to find my phone, and thank God, I have 2 bars on it, enough to call my kid's dad and tell him what's going on. He says he's on his way, and at the same time I'm on the phone, I see the car pass. I tell my kid's dad this, so he knows they're headed straight towards him. I'm sitting there trying to calm down my kids, but it's not working because I'm crying and shaking so bad that I can't even keep my hands on the wheel or hold my keys. It felt like hours, but the car never passed back by us. I'm still so nervous and just waiting for my kid's dad to show up. He finally shows up, and he tells me to calm down and just follow him closely home, which is still 7 miles away. I'm following him, but we never see the car again. We made it home safely, so we put our kids to bed, and I explained everything that happened to my kid's dad. He decided to stay the night with us, so we felt safe. I haven't gotten any sleep yet because I'm just still so shaken up from the whole thing. I can't stop thinking what would have happened if they caught us or found out where I lived. What would they have done to my daughters and I? How would I have escaped with my kids? I really don't think I'll be leaving the house for a while. I'm glad we're safe and alive. But to those crazy 2 thugs who followed us, I really wish you would have wrecked and hit that elk. Fuck you. Let's never meet again. I'm just still so shaken up, and my brain is foggy from the lack of sleep and adrenaline. Everyone stay safe out there. People are crazy, and you just never know who's going to target you, and for what reason. Pay attention to your surroundings, and always trust your gut. If you happen to have children like me, do whatever is necessary to protect them. Hug them as often as you can. Just stay safe out there.